In this lesson we're learning about the if function. Now let's start by writing out what the if function is made up of. It's got three attributes, and we'll explain exactly what the if function can do. So you start off with the if, and in the brackets there's three attributes. The first attribute is the question, the logic statement you're asking. If the customer has paid his bill, if the customer lives in London. Now all of these questions will have a similar outcome, either a yes or a no. If the customer has paid his bill, well, he either has or he hasn't. Now in computer technology they never use the yes no argument, they use true and false. So we separate each attribute in all functions with a comma. So we got the question followed by the true, comma, and the false. So if we take a look at this, reading it from left to right, if the customer has paid his bill. Now if the customer has paid his bill, then the answer to that question is true, and Excel will jump to the true and perform whatever you happen to have written in that part. If we read the question again, if the customer has paid his bill, well, let's say this customer hasn't paid his bill, then the answer to the question is false, and Excel will skip the true and jump to the false, and it will then perform whatever you've written there. It can only ever do one or the other. So let's look at an example of where this could be used. Here we got a small spreadsheet that has a list of departments, how much they've currently spent, and a column that specifies whether they've gone over or under budget. Now if we look down the bottom, they've been given £300 as their budget allocation. So I need to know if they've gone over that budget. All that we want to see in this column here are the words over or under. Now we can use the if function for this because this will automate everything. And this is where the if function comes in useful. If you find you're doing something manually, you're having to check up something on another sheet in another book, and then based on what you see, you then have to do something elsewhere, write something, calculate something, change something, then you could use the if statement to do this for you. Now we've got over here the different logic symbols which you may be familiar with. The open chevron represents greater than and equal to, less than is the closed chevron, less than and equal, and two chevrons together, not equal to, does not equal. So we can use a combination of these when we're writing our question to ask if something is greater than a particular date or less than a certain value. So we're going to start by writing for the catering department one of these if statements. Now the way that you want to write these is to read it back in plain English as you write it. So it is a formula, so we begin with equals. So we type an equals there. We then type the function word, in this case if, and then an open bracket. Now first of all we need the question, the logical test. And our question is going to be if this £200 here is greater than this budget allocation down here, now that's our question part finished with. If this figure happens to be greater than this figure, we do a comma and we move to the next section of the if, where it's asking for the value if it's true. Well, if the answer to that question is true, that means that they have spent more than the £300 allocated. That means they've gone over. Now at this point we can write a formula, or we can write some text, whatever we want the program to do when it arrives here. Now we want some text to appear on the screen. We want the word over. Now you can put in any amount of text as long as it's surrounded by speech marks. And that goes for any formula that you write in Excel. If you're putting plain text that's not a command or a function, then it has to be surrounded in speech marks. So I do a speech mark, which is your shifted 2 on the keyboard. Type the word over, close speech mark. We've now finished with the true part. We do comma. Now it's asking for the value if the answer to that question is false. If it is, then that means they haven't gone over, they're still under. So in speech marks we type the word under. And there's our 3 parts to it: the question, then what to do if the answer's yes, and what to do if the answer's no. We enter that and we get the word under. If ever you get an error when writing an if function, it's often quite trivial what's causing the error. Most people forget the speech marks, or they only put 1 in, and they often forget to put the separating commas. Now it's worth testing this before we go any further. So if we were to change what they've spent to say £400, you'll notice it automatically changes to the word over. Now we do want to copy this down, and we're going to add something that we learned in an earlier lesson. If we go back into our formula, we know from this beginning part that it's looking at this cell and this 300 down here. Now I want to be able to copy this formula down the column. Because these are relative, they will move down as well. Now I want this blue box to follow me and move down with me, but I don't want this red box to move downwards. It always has to remain in this row 15. So we can put a padlock, a $sign, in front of the 15. Remember, the $sign represents a padlock. It will stop a part of your formula from moving. So we've now locked it into row 15. We can enter this. I can now copy this down. You can either do a copy and paste, or you can just grab hold of the autofill handle and pull that down. And there we have all the answers that are totally automated. You'll never have to touch these again. These figures here will change regularly. The beauty of this, that if this changes as well, so if we change this to something such as £380 is their budget, you'll notice that the list updates as well. And that's known as a basic if statement.